Hi guys, and welcome back to the Grad School Series. Today we're going to be talking about the thesis, aka the beast. Aside from walking down the stage and getting your fancy floppy hat, this is pretty much the end goal of your doctoral studies. And depending on how you approach it, it's kind of the only souvenir or proof that you actually did it, right? Now obviously you don't start at the beginning of your 4, 5, whatever year process with the thesis in mind, but I'm here to tell you that maybe you should think about it, even if just a teeny tiny little bit. Okay, so first off, some harsh truths. The biggest of which is no one is really going to read your thesis. Okay, aside from probably your advisors to check it over and your examining committee, but really a thesis is not the currency of academia. All is to say that there are some smart ways to produce your thesis that are going to save you a lot of time and also be more useful for you career-wise. One of the biggest things, and probably the thing that I'm most grateful to my advisors for, is telling me to do a thesis by publication. The key difference was each of my chapters was already a publication. It was already a manuscript either under review somewhere or actually had already been published somewhere. So each chapter had its own mini introduction, materials and methods, results, discussion section. Now I did end up editing it a little bit to make the whole thesis cohesive. Different journals have different referencing styles, and I changed all the referencing styles in my thesis to be one style. I still had the general format of like a traditional thesis in that I had an introduction at the beginning. The point of that was to kind of tie all those chapters together or introduce kind of a common theme. It also let me go a little bit broader in terms of the literature review, in terms of background material. When you're writing a journal article, you don't really need to set up stuff that people in the field know. But in the thesis, you really should. And the point of that is to show your understanding of the topic. So then same at the end. I did still have a general discussion. So this was talking about like limitations in my experiments, extra questions that came out of doing these experiments. Again, tying all the different concepts together. I actually also had another chapter that was like a discussion in the form of a literature review. I really wanted to argue a particular point based on the information that I'd found through my experiments. And I did that in that separate literature review. Now, that is pretty unconventional. Needless to say, there is actually some flexibility in what your thesis ends up looking like. There are definitely some key advantages to a thesis by publication that you can't really see on the surface, let's say. Number one, I feel like in hindsight, a thesis by publication saved me a lot of time and probably also like a lot of stress and heartache. And the reason for that is I would write up my experimental chapters or prepare them for a manuscript pretty much as soon as the experiment was done. And also I guess you could argue if you're in a really competitive field, it makes sure that your data is out there before someone else's is. Probably the biggest advantage though is coming back to that original point. Who is going to really read your thesis in the real world? What people read are journal articles. So if you're already building a body of work during your PhD, that puts you in really good stead for a postdoc or a lectureship, or even if you go out of academia, it's good to have that kind of like academic currency in your pocket. And a minor point, which I think is kind of like a little bit cheeky, but also working to your advantage, is that if you have already published the material in your thesis, it makes it pretty hard for those assessing it to really criticize you. It's already been criticized in the peer review process by arguably the top people in that field. So unless they have some kind of like new information or insight that is really novel, they're pretty much going to respect that. In summary, thesis, probably not as important as you might think it is or how it's been made out to be. 2, if you can, try and do a thesis by publication. And if you can't, maybe try and publish along the way. 3, there are real advantages of doing this, the biggest of which is that you build up a body of academic work that you can actually use later on. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you found this useful. If you did, please consider buying me a coffee. Today we've got a lovely Florida mug from the op shop. I've put a link in the description below. Stay tuned for more videos in the Grad School series, and I'll see you guys very soon. Bye.